Today we're reviewing more settlers of Louisiana, and we're going to be talking about the Cajuns and the Africans. And just like yesterday, we're going to focus less today on why these people came to Louisiana hundreds of years ago, and we're going to focus more on what cultures they brought with them, because those cultures are still important to life here in Louisiana. For example, yesterday we talked about the French, and we didn't just talk about why they came to Louisiana to trade on the Mississippi. We also talked about what cultures they brought with them, because they make a big difference in our lives. So, for example, the French brought with them Mardi Gras in Catholic churches. So, if the French never came to Louisiana, we'd have no Catholic churches like St. Louis Cathedral. We would have no Mardi Gras celebration. Can you imagine Louisiana without Mardi Gras? So these settlers had a big impact on Louisiana. And so that's why we're going to look at the Cajuns and the Africans and what cultures they brought with them from their homelands. First, let's look at a map so that you can draw on your map the path that the Cajuns and the Africans took to get to Louisiana. First, remember that Louisiana is here in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, let's look at some of the different folks that have traveled here from different areas. First, we have the Africans coming from Africa on the west coast. They traveled by boat, over the sea, over the ocean, to settle right here in New Orleans and Louisiana. The Cajuns came from up here in Canada on the east coast of North America, and they also traveled by boat down to New Orleans and Louisiana to settle. Now, we said we're not going to talk so much today about why they came. We're going to talk about what they brought with them. But it's still important to talk about why they came. So real quick, answer these questions on your worksheet. Why did the Africans come to Louisiana? And why did the Cajuns settle in Louisiana? The Africans, as you know, were forced to settle in Louisiana to work. They did not choose to come to Louisiana. They were brought by the Europeans to work as slaves. It's a similar story with the Cajuns. The Cajuns in some ways didn't choose to come to Louisiana, but they had to because they were kicked out of their homeland in Canada. Now, enough about what happened hundreds of years ago. What I want to know is, what did the Africans and Cajuns bring with them? What did they bring from their culture that became important to us today? Well, the first thing that they brought with them is their music, okay? So in their suitcase, in their packages, you can go ahead and draw a drum, all right? That's going to be like our symbol for the music that the Cajuns and the Africans brought to Louisiana. The other important piece of their culture that the Cajuns and the Africans brought to Louisiana were their recipes, their cooking style. I'm actually going to draw a book. It's going to be a cookbook, because Louisiana recipes, a lot of them have their roots in African and Cajun cooking. All right, so here's my big book of recipes. All right, you can draw something in your suitcase that signifies music and food, whether it's a saxophone and a cooking pot, or a book of music and forks and knives, something to represent music and food. Those are what the Africans and Cajuns brought with them from their homelands. So we said that they brought their music and their recipes. I want to talk a little bit about the recipes because I love food. So I want to know what foods did they actually bring with them. Now here we have a list of famous New Orleans recipes: gumbo, jambalaya, po' boys, red beans and rice, and beignets. These are all foods that are unique to New Orleans and Louisiana. And again, most of them have their roots in African and Cajun culture. Next on your worksheet, we get to talk about something that's a little more exciting. We talked about the Cajuns bringing their culture, and the Africans bringing their culture, and the French bringing their culture. Well, once they're here, something really cool happens. You start to have a Creole culture develop. And a Creole culture is a mixed culture. Creole means a mix of cultures. Fill in your worksheet. Creole means a mix of cultures. So, for example, Cajuns and Africans brought their music, and their music blended to become Zydeco music. Use this information to fill in your blanks. Creole means a mix of cultures, and an example is Cajun and African music being blended to become Zydeco music. In Zydeco music, you find features of both Cajun music and African music. So I have like a little checklist that we can find here when we're looking at Zydeco music. When I look at this Zydeco musician, I see that there's a mix of cultures. They're an African American, okay? That's showing the influence of African cultures. Most Zydeco musicians also perform in the French language. Well, remember, the French language was one of the languages brought over by the Cajuns. So that shows me evidence that this is a mix of Cajun culture and African culture. I see both of those elements in Zydeco music. Go ahead and check off French language and African American people. Both of these elements are in Zydeco music. You are going to have a chance to do some readings, and tomorrow you're going to see some examples of Zydeco music and Creole culture. But now you're going to read more about the Cajuns and the Africans and what they brought with them to Louisiana and how they impacted our state. See you next time. Enjoy your readings.